What are subtle red flags at a job interview that say working here would suck? You are required to wear clothing that has the company logo. You must purchase it yourself from the company. I brought up a company's awful Glassdoor reviews and they got so mad they ended the interview. Well, guess I dodged that bullet. We only want the best of the best. Me, how much are you paying? Minimum wage. I didn't know it at the time, but you'll be wearing many hats was a sign that they were going to give me the work of 4 positions and the wage of 1. I didn't last a year there before I left and now I won't even finish reading job ads that include that line. I once turned down a job offer because they mentioned that the previous person in the position had quit after a few months, and most of the people I interviewed with seemed stressed out. This actually happened to me. Interviewer, do you have any questions for us? Me, what is a challenge this department has recently faced? Interviewer, job security. When you ask, what do you like about working here and the interviewer talks about the location of the job, it's a great place to live, instead of the actual job. We don't like clock watchers here. We expect everyone to be committed. Expecting more work for no extra pay. Getting mad at you when you leave at 5 even though your stated work hours end at 5. You'll get full-time hours but won't be full-time ACA. We'll do everything in our power to avoid giving you benefits even though we have you working more than 40 hours in a week. Employees are either new hires or have been there for 15+ years with no in between. There is no room for improvement. It's better to leave for advancement. Always ask the interviewer about the last person who worked the position you are interviewing for, how long they worked, and why they left. Their answers can be very telling of the work environment. I once showed up for an interview and the manager wasn't there that day. No one called me to let me know. The assistant manager was not apologetic for the scheduling issue at all. She was literally just like, oh, she's not here today, in a tone that suggested I should somehow already know that. She said they would call me to reschedule sometime the next week. I told her I was currently unavailable MW but could come in anytime. She said if I couldn't make time for the interview, I probably wouldn't be a good fit. I said okay, and went on to my other interviews and ending up working elsewhere. Think that would be the end of it, but both the manager and the assistant manager badmouthed me to a few other people in the industry, including one of my friends. Hello? I made time for an interview. You disrespected me by not calling me to let me know it was cancelled. I gave you the times I was available to reschedule, and that was disrespectful somehow? Everyone looks tired. Also, you don't see anyone in your department before working in it other than the boss. Made this mistake a few times. Was the worst jobs. I came in for a job interview at 7:30 p.m. The entire staff was still in the office. Should have known right then that 9 to 5 was not ever going to happen. One day I worked until 2:30 a.m. to finish up a big project, and my boss said to me I could come in an hour later the next morning. Gee, thanks bro. With my public transport travel time, that gives me a solid 2 hours of sleep instead of just the 1. Edit. With all the stories and the reactions on this post, I just wanted to say that there really are good employers out there. Do not stand by being treated so poorly, because you deserve to be treated with respect. For any employers reading this thread, here's a few examples of how to create a loyal, healthy employee base. My current employer puts family first. If there is an emergency at home, they tell you to handle that first. For example, when I was miscarrying, they told me I don't want to see you in the next 2 weeks at least. Take your time and give me a call when you feel ready to come back in. Okay, 9-5 means 9-5. If you have to leave early for something or come in later BC of something, they expect you to take your own responsibility and don't even check if you actually catch up the lost time. They just expect that you do. By doing so, you create that on the rare occasion that you do have to stay late to finish something. You do that without complaining, because it only happens incidentally and not structurally, and certainly isn't expected. In fact, they ask if you really have to stay late or if you just think you have to stay late. If you both give and take, you are much more likely to give back. They frequently and genuinely ask about your well-being, and then also follow that up. If you tell them your mother is unwell, they ask about her a week later. It's not lost in the abyss that is business. No. You feel seen and heard. You look stressed. Is there anything I can do? Do you want to go over your to-do list together and prioritize what needs done first? Things like this mean the world. One time they walked in and said, "Hey, my afternoon meeting got cancelled. I know you have like 15 files that need checking and I've seen how full your calendar is. Why don't you give me 4 and I'll make sure they get sent out today." To lighten your load a little, they focus on little tokens of appreciation. A chocolate Easter bunny waiting on your desk at Easter. Last year they had 10 Easter eggs in every room. I found one hidden in the box of my crackers, hahaha. They make sure your salary is paid before Christmas even though you normally don't get paid before the 26th. They make sure every secretary gets flowers on Secretary Day. They bought us weird pens. Think bright neon color with dangly beads on top, just because they thought it would brighten up our days. Like, it only costs a penny, but it makes your staff feel seen. When there's a heat wave, they treat us with popsicles. When it's holiday season, they randomly decide to close the office at noon on the 31st of December if we have to learn it in the last couple of hours of this day we're doing something wrong. So let's shut down for the day. Have a good one, guys. They do not tolerate gossip. We talk with each other, not about each other. They hire capable staff. People who are not putting in the work efforts do not last. They will ask us about people's progress. Like, what do you think about the new receptionist? And we can answer frankly, even if our opinion is that they are not making enough progress etc. They want to know what we think and they value our input. This creates a healthy work environment with driven people who all have heart for the cause. Mistakes are human, and we solve them together without smack talking about the person responsible. Of course we all have our bad days and it's okay to mope and murmur here and there to your roommate, but we really try to keep that to an absolute minimum. If you can see the floor before the interview, you can sometimes get a vibe about the place. I once went to interview for a sales position. Aside from the interviewer being 30 minutes late, it did allow me to sit and observe the situation. I realized pretty quickly this was not going to be the place for me. Very quiet except a handful of people on the phones cold calling. Many reps trying to push the contacts on the other end. Just painful to listen to. And when they'd hang up there wasn't really any interaction with co-workers. Just quiet. And then another call. It all seemed very tense. I noped out of there real quick after the 5 minutes the interview took. Dodge a bullet. I had interviewed for a call center job at another place that's as a complete 180 from that. Yes, it's a call center job so it is what it is. But there was laughter on the floor. People talking to floor managers. Just a completely different vibe that was more inviting. When they tell you what I'm paying you stays between you and me. Don't discuss pay with anyone else usually means they are trying to pay you less than your co-workers who do the same job and don't want you to know. I was once told sometimes the hourly workers go on strike and they lock us in to keep the production line running. But management brings us steaks and we have an informal agreement with the union so you can cross the picket lines once a week to visit your wife. Had an online interview with a company a few years ago. Was interviewed by the regional manager. Seemed like a normal interview. Halfway through, he let slip that there were 6 other people from his company watching and listening in. But the software was set up so I could not see or hear them. And he actually got a kick out of telling me this. It was like being on a first date with someone and finding out later she had a hidden camera on her and her parents and 6 other family members were watching the whole time. I'm like, yeah, no, duck that noise. At my last place of work, the person interviewing me had a printed cartoon on their wall of someone who looked like a bomb had blown up in their face. With the caption "I spoke with boss name about it. I guess we're still doing it." That wasn't subtle at all. But I ignored it. The boss was an absolute tyrant who wouldn't listen to her staff, consider changing her mind about anything, or let people do the work they were best suited to do. She wouldn't show up for weeks at a time. The job itself was decent, but she was the worst boss I've ever had. When you are signing all the forms they give you and you are taking your time to read over every document so that you can fully understand what you are getting into and people come in and start telling you that you don't need to read this and that, just sign here and so on. I interviewed for an independent contractor position on a piece rate. It's hard to predict how much you're going to earn on a piece rate. So to attract me, the manager showed me some pay stubs from his guys. I noticed that 1. He could easily cherry pick pay stubs to show his best guys' best weeks. All that tells me is that I'm likely to make less than what he's showing me, at least on average. 2. The pay stubs were obviously designed to be confusing. They were a full page and absolutely covered in data. He wanted me to be impressed by a dollar amount, obviously not accounting for costs which the contractor has to carry or taxes which the contractor has to deduct and pay, but he took them away before anyone could have deciphered what the pay period, piece rate, number of jobs or KMS was. 3. He showed me other people pay stubs. WTF. Another red flag is that they were desperate to hire, because they didn't have enough contractors to deliver the work contracts they'd already sold. I had 2 guys from different offices call me after I'd declined the position who apparently still thought I was considering it. Jobs where the expectations of the position aren't clear. The person hiring you should be able to give a clear idea of your responsibilities day to day in a practical way. It shows that the company understands what it wants out of the position. I've worked a couple positions that had a really hard time figuring out who was supposed to do what, that lead to a lot of confusion, and both of them had this in the interviews. If the company you're working for can't define what success in that position looks like, you won't be able to either. If they seem too relieved that someone actually showed up for the interview. I was once part of a group onboarding for an IT job. They handed us all the one-page new hire contract and everyone except me signed immediately. When I read the paperwork, I discovered we were signing a mystery document. Clauses included I agree to abide by the personal search and seizure security policy, attached, without other pages. There was no way to determine what I was agreeing to. I kept requesting more and more pages until the HR drone said okay, I guess, me, is just determined to hold everyone up. We will handle you separately if you are struggling so much. After I walked out and drove home, I called the hiring manager to apologize for not taking the job. He informed me that HR reported I had walked out after refusing to be drug tested. Not getting to speak with who your direct manager will be, a game room or ping pong table is advertised as a perk. The blatant overuse of buzzwords about your profession, clearly written by someone with no clue. People seem tired when they insist the suicide nets are merely a safety precaution. When they feel the need to reassure you in the interview that at that company, they work hard, but also play hard. They don't play hard, it's a sweatshop and they're just trying to convince that it's anything but one. Well, the overtime isn't mandatory, but most folks stick around after hours most days. Spoilers, the overtime is mandatory. When they ask out of nowhere what clients can you bring with you? If they're always hiring, constant staff turnover means people quit a lot. So it must be it. Edit. Thanks for the awards. Last job I worked. Yay. Everyone here is new. But it's totally because of COVID. The boss doesn't like people going out to get lunch because they're afraid you'll never come back. So being your own lunch, you'll get weird looks if you leave on time. It was a Chinese-owned company with heavy Chinese work culture influence, so you were expected to stay overtime all week. Also, the people here are nice, but it's pretty stressful. Eater. Also was told by my trainer, you want to know the best advice I can give you? Find another job. This was like my second week in. We work hard and we play hard. Translation. You will work 60+ hours a week. You will be expected to work late nights and early mornings. People will treat this job like their whole life. We'll also underpay you. It may look like a decent salary, but when you back it out to hourly, it's not even remotely competitive with industry standard. But we have kegs and a ping pong table. Also, if everyone that interviews you has been there less than 2 years, it's a sign that they can't retain good employees. They dodge questions on pay, meaning they don't pay enough for what they expect of you. The word family in reference to the employees means they want you to work lots of unpaid overtime. Edit. Also forgot. But if they keep talking about the experience you'll gain, that's also code for we know we're going to be underpaying you. I once interviewed for a job wherein the interviewer actually directly told me that the job was extremely stressful and they'd had a slew of new hires quit within a month or two. The job was at a psychiatric hospital. I thanked her for being honest with me and said that I was not interested. As she was walking me out, she leaned in and said, "You're doing the right thing. Our last hire quit because he said he was having palpitations all the time here and was worried he would have a heart attack." About 3 years later, at another company, I saw one of the women who had interviewed me. She worked in a totally different position in a totally different setting. She said that the other woman who had interviewed me, the one who gave me the warning, actually did suffer a heart attack. She survived, and she stopped working there. I was so thankful she warned me. Most interviewers wouldn't do that. Edit. And in thinking more about that woman, obviously she was very stressed and she was having to cover work for that position that needed to be filled. She could have easily, and understandably, have gone into survival mode and thought, you know what, let's just hire her, meaning me, and then at least I will have some relief for a month or two until this one quits too. But she didn't do that. She thought of my welfare, a stranger, over her own interests. And clearly, she was suffering. I would have relocated for that job too. About 150 miles. She was aware of that. Maybe that played into her decision to warn me. Maybe not. Either way, she was an extraordinary person. My current boss gave me a great tip on the last interview I had. He said, ask them if you can pick an employee to chat with about how they like the position you're applying for. They'll give a better impression of the place than management. I got the job I was interviewing for. I turned it down because the above is the kind of management I want to keep in my life. Also, the place undercut my pay offer, I found out, which is certainly also a red flag. Once an interviewer straight up asked me if I had any trouble working for free on weekends. I told them my free time is more valuable than anything and that the only way that I would work a weekend is if they are paying me and if I felt like working a weekend. She got really mad at me and ended the interview right away. Biggest red flag I've ever seen because they didn't even try to hide it. Do you have a strong personality? And everyone else who worked there were raging cunts who I literally got into massive shouting matches with and quit over within 6 months of having started. The money was good but no tie. We're a family is code for working long hours, lots of overtime, and they don't care about their employees. Just to add to the flame, I was an 18-year-old college student at the time, and they would schedule my work shift. During my class time, my manager knew I was not available till 4 PM. If you ask what the opportunities for promotion are and they don't give you an answer, you're not going to have kids anytime soon, are you? What are your childcare arrangements? Are both things my wife has been on the receiving end of. You'd assume you wouldn't apply if it was an issue, right? Funnily enough, I'm a man and I've never been asked. Was interviewed by senior programmer and the department head. The department head was continuously making condescending remarks towards the other interviewer. Poor guy just sounded broken. Hope he's somewhere else now. If they tell you not to discuss pay, I never ever followed this rule. It's important to find a way to broach the subject with your co-workers. If they are of the mind frame that it's impolite to ask someone their pay, then tell them yours and pay very close attention. Do they smile a bit? Do they look disappointed? Try to gauge from that. Because we don't discuss pay has always been a way to hold down wages and nothing else. It's illegal, but unfortunately it occurs anyway. We're a family. Translation: we will constantly make you do stuff outside your job description. We will call you on air days off. We will accidentally lose any overtime records. We will yell at you. We will try to buy your affection with pizza lunch days. We will succeed because your morale will be obliterated. Who registered sign? You registered sign? You registered sign? You registered sign? You registered sign? My favorite is there's a lot of people waiting in line to work here. Count yourself lucky. Huge red flag. The one question every job applicant must ask is, why is this position open? And watch the faces of everyone in the room before they answer. If they tell you the company is growing and it's a new position, great. If Smiling Mary says it was her job but she was just promoted, terrific. If they tell you that the last couple of people they tried in the position just didn't work out, thank them and leave. Receiving a job offer without a real interview, or even directly after the interview, that's usually a sign of desperation on the employer's end. Also avoid anywhere that says, "We're like family here." Also avoid any position that doesn't have a clear job description. Says something like, "The incumbent is responsible for other duties assigned as management sees fit." They will make you their itch. Edit. To all those getting caught up on the exact wording of other duties as assigned. What I mean is, if they give you a very vague description of the job, or not exactly sure how to answer your questions, or have 3 bullet points of job description and then it's all other duties, or if they can't give you examples of other duties, be prepared to become that company's itch. We're looking for rockstars. We're looking for people who will tolerate hourly pay, hours, and treatment of employees. When they get the interview time wrong and then gaslight you about it. I've had a couple interviews where that happened and the person told me it was me who made the mistake. I did not feel bad missing the opportunity. They told me all about their generous severance packages in the initial interview. Turnover City. You get hinted at stuff or they beat around the bush on scheduling explanation. Here they like to hire part-time then schedule you 39.5 hours or 30 minutes before full-time to avoid paying insurance and such. I always ask about training and learning curves. Every job I've had that went wrong I noticed that when that question came up they stumbled. The current job I have, when I asked the question they had sparks in their eyes as they explained the whole process from day one of shadowing to the transition to working solo. And even when COVID hit they managed to continue without skipping a beat. Edit. Oh gosh, thank you. My first ever award. Made my week. I went into an interview for a low-level admin position, and they made me put my cell phone in a bucket up front, stating no phones are allowed in the back. It reduces productivity. Big nope for me. I was interviewing at a local business that had recently been acquired by a well-known corporation. I asked the interviewers a question that I found invaluable. What do you personally find are the most challenging parts of this job? And I watched the light leave their eyes. They both sighed wryly and said it's really busy. And that was all I needed to hear to know that working there would be a nightmare. I emailed afterward to remove myself from consideration. And I am confident I did the right thing. The ad for the job has been running continuously for 10+ years. Your salary is completely commission based and you won't get paid for 2 months. Every solar panel sales job. Edit. I interviewed at a few. Not everyone has 2 months worth of savings right now. I once applied for a job as a laborer at the local shipping company's warehouse. They asked me to come in for a job interview and bring copies of my resume and criminal record, which I thought was reasonable, since everybody else was asking for the same. The interview was conducted by the supervisor of the department, but the manager of the warehouse was also present for the interview. When I handed the documents to the supervisor he was immediately visually surprised and went, "Whoa, hey, check it out, a clean record," to the manager. And that was it. The next thing I knew the interview was over and the manager went, "Alright kid, let's show you around the place." I didn't take the job. I once found a job ad where under what we offer it said, an office on the 4th floor and no elevator so free exercise to keep you healthy and fit. If one or more family members work for the boss, their kids especially, you'll end up getting screwed while their family members get raises and get the easy stuff. You'll end up overworked, underpaid and talked down to no matter how much seniority you have. Lots of people standing at colleagues' desks chatting. Either you'll be expected to be present at all times without a sufficient workload, or you'll be picking up the slack for co-workers. Also, I've had lots of interviews where they told me they didn't expect me to have a 9 to 5 mentality. I tend to throw back a sure, if the work is done by 3, I'd be okay with leaving early and consider anybody who seriously objects to that not worth working for. Company image is a priority. We expect our employees to conduct themselves appropriately during off hours. Basically, we duck I know you. You dress how we want, look how we want, and ACT how we want from now on. We work hard but we play hard is code for we work 12 hours days minimum and we're all alcoholics. We're like a family. This just means they will treat you like it.